Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can confirm that we are streaming and the recording is up, so if you'd like to go ahead and start your meeting.
Excellent. Thank you, Madam Clerk. There we are. Okay. So I see that we indeed have quorum. So I will call this meeting to order, regular council meeting for Monday, October the 4th. First of all, I'd like to apologize to any members of the public. We were running about 15 minutes late. Council had another previous meeting before this meeting, an in-camera meeting, and that ran a little overtime. So again, apologize for keeping everyone waiting. Okay, land acknowledgement. This is something that council has taken on doing. We did this last council, and we will be doing it at the beginning of every council meeting from here on in. We begin this meeting by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. And acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people. Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that the agenda for the October 4th, 2021 regular meeting of council be adopted. To you, Mr. Mayor, to call for any amendments.
Okay, after viewing the amendment, does any councillor have any amendments to make to the agenda? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. This vote begins with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. That does carry, Mr. Mayor. That does bring you to the disclosure of pecuniary interest.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. After viewing the agenda, does any council member have a disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof to declare? Councillor Hildebrandt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, item 8.4 deals with the appointment to the Board of Directors of Penn West. I am presently a member of the Penn West Board, and as such, I will not be participating in the discussion and voting. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. That shall be noted by the clerk.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have so noted. And Mr. Mayor, that does bring you to your first item on the agenda, and that is the COVID-19 pandemic update from the Fire Chief.
Okay. Fire Chief Bob Lindberner, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, councillors, and members of staff. Just a brief update. Pelham has had a total case count of 655. Pleased to announce that first time in a long time that currently Pelham has 0 active cases. Niagara Region total case counts is 17,694. Of those, 254 are active. 17,007 have been resolved, and we're at 433 fatalities. Ontario total case count 588,612. Of those, 573,854 have been resolved, and we have 9,754 fatalities. Our hospital numbers, admissions, were at 146. We have 159 people in ICU, and we have 104 people in ICU on ventilators. And it's sad to say that out of those 104 people on ventilators, 94 of them are unvaccinated people. Canada total case count 1,631,607. Of those, 1,558,915 are resolved. Total deaths across the country are 27,947. Niagara's case doubling time is 416 days. Our reproduction rate is 1.1. slightly above the provincial rate, which is 1.0. Our positivity rate has gone down since last week to 3.0. Our variants of concern really haven't changed much with the exception of the Delta variant that stands at 186. Infection spread across the region, still consistent with the number one cause is close contact with a confirmed case at 65.6%. Our public health department, Niagara Public Health, is currently dealing with 14 active outbreaks. They've resolved 458. As far as administration of vaccines, Niagara region, 708,532 total, which represents 75.8% of first dose and 71.2% of second dose. Ontario total doses are at 21,870,930. Of those, just over 10.5 million are second dose or fully vaccinated people. Canadians across country, they have delivered just over 56 million doses. Our provincial indicators have improved slightly from last time we spoke. Our reproduction rate, new cases, and our new cases unknown are in red, but we have improved on our daily averages, moved up to green. Our hospital admissions remain in green. Public Health has announced they're starting third shot boosters for high-risk seniors, starting sometime this week or next week. I'm 100% sure on the date, but I know the nursing home next door to the fire hall, they're doing that home on the 13th, which is a good sign. The MCC now requires all patrons entering the facility to show proof of full vaccination and government ID, and there are some exceptions to that to organized sports and a number of other items. MCC has hired a security guard during high traffic times to assist in checking proof and ID, which seems to be working very well. The MCC has had a number of incidents involving unvaccinated patrons and challenging the proof of requirements. We've tried to stay ahead of that. We've dealt with most of them. It really helps having security there. I think it keeps people down to their comments. And our Junior B club, I just mentioned to them that they stepped up, and during Junior B games, they have supplied a member of their staff to assist us in checking proof at the front door. So thanks to them. And that's the end of my report. If you have any questions.
Okay. Thanks, Chief. Before I turn it to council, one question I have, is there any clinics at the MCC coming up in the future, or have they stopped those?
No, we have a schedule out for October. There is, we were there yesterday and today. We have a few more dates this month. So yeah, there's and the uptick in walk-ins is improving. As you can see, the percentages are going up now. We were kind of stagnant there for a while, and they had quite a few booked too. So yeah, they're still pretty busy.
Excellent. You wouldn't have know the numbers on that on a per day at the MCC?
Today they had 248 appointments, and then they had all the walk-ins, and it was a pretty steady stream all day. So I don't have that exact number, but it was a pretty good stream.
Excellent. Good to hear. To council now, I see Councillor Hildebrandt.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I liked what the standard reported from Regional Councillor Houston on the report that was given by the Medical Officer of Health from the Niagara region. It's time for some good news. But looking at, I watched the statistics from the Niagara region, and it's amazing to me that 99% of the people 80 and over are all doubly vaccinated. 75 in the age group 75 to 79 or 99%, 74 to 74 96%, 65 to 69 or 95%, and 60 to 64 90% are totally vaccinated. That's over 25% of us, and I think just about all of us fall in that group. I think that's really good news. I just wanted to add that to the report, and I don't know if the fire chief can comment on that.
Well, I guess the older you get, the more responsible you are, because our problem child group right now is between 20 and 39-year-olds. That's our biggest group that refuse to get vaccinated or really kind of create problems for us. So if we can get the younger group to step up and start vaccinating, we'd be a lot better off.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, for bringing forth those figures. Any other councillor, any questions, comments on the chief's report? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Hildebrandt, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that Council receive the COVID-19 update presentation from B. Limburner, Fire Chief and Community Emergency Management Coordinator, for information. And unless there's any other discussion, the vote begins with Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur?
Yes.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
And that carries. Mr. Mayor, that brings us to our next item on the agenda, and that is the update presentation from the CAO, Mr. David Cribbs.
Mr. CAO, Mr. Cribbs, you have the floor.
Good evening, Council. This evening, we have a report on the agenda at 8.3.2. It's a staff report of information or routine nature, and it is the specifics and the contents of the town's mandatory vaccination policy for staff members. It does not specifically apply to members of this council. That was instituted 2 weeks ago today, and has been in effect for 2 weeks. I'm happy to report no official complaints or formal legal battles have arisen from that as of yet. So going smoothly thus far. And the basic requirements are for proof of double vaccination by December, and at this point in time, we're at close to we're just slightly under 100% compliance.
Thank you for that report, Mr. CAO. Any questions from council to the CAO? Not seeing any. Thank you again for the report, and we'll turn to the clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Wing, seconded by Councillor Kaur. Be it resolved that Council receive the COVID-19 update presentation from D. Cribbs, Chief Administrative Officer, for information. And this vote begins with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt?
Yes.
Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
And that carries. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does bring us to our first registered delegate for tonight. We do have a member from the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee here tonight with us, and it's Reese Evans. I just asked Ms. Leach to bring Mr. Evans into the meeting room. With us, and it's Reese Evans. I just asked Ms. Leach to bring Mr. Evans into the meeting room. Thank you. I do just remind the presenter that you have 10 minutes, and at the 10-minute mark, I will just let you know that you have reached that, and then you can wrap up your presentation. I do think that you have a PowerPoint. Did you wish to share your screen, or would you like us to share our screen?
You can, it would be helpful if you could share your screen, please.
Thank you. I will ask Ms. Leach to go ahead and share our screen.
Okay, are we good yet, Holly?
We're just waiting for Ms. Leach to share the screen with their PowerPoint presentation. Just give us a moment. We can see it. Thank you. Mr. Evans, you can begin whenever you're ready.
Mr. Reese, good to see you again. And
Thank you.
Ms. Harrington, go ahead.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Junkin, members of council and town staff. My name is Anne Villalta, and my friend Reese Evans. We're both members of the Joint Accessibility Advisory Council, and we thank you for the opportunity to present tonight. A little history of the JAC Committee. In 2003, 6 municipalities came together to create the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee. The committee includes the town of Lincoln, Township of West Lincoln, Town of Pelham, City of Thorold, Town of Niagara-on-the-Lake, and Town of Grimsby. We have 1 or 2 members from each municipality. We also have 2 councillors, 1 from Thorold, 1 from Lincoln, and 1 consultant. In 2021, the committee expanded. We are now joined by the City of Port Colborne. We welcome Port Colborne and will assist the city to ensure compliance with the AODA and we will work to develop positive relationships within the local community. Our activities. Audits. We audit municipal facilities. We have training modules for staff to ensure AODA compliance. And the committee has branding. We have a new logo, a community flag, and a Facebook page. Continued activities. We continue to promote our accessibility award. We use an audit checklist in each business. If the business scores 80% or higher, they receive the We Are Accessible award. To date, 10 businesses have received the award throughout our catchment area. One of them is Fonthill Sobeys and Massimo's Pizza.
Is that me?
No. Currently, 22% of Canadian population has a disability. The deadline for full accessibility in the municipality is fast approaching. This means goods and services will need to be accessible, customer service, information, and communications, new facilities and services. We will continue to work with staff and council to ensure compliance with the AODA and are available to answer any questions or concerns to review site plans.
We ask that you meet the deadlines of the 2025 Accessibility Act, and also that you promote our award throughout the town. And we just want to thank you again for the opportunity to present tonight.
And that's our presentation. Thank you, Madam Mr. Mayor Duncan. Thank you.
Okay, and I apologize for the misnomer that I gave you, that was on the agenda. Again, thank you and Mr. Evans for taking the time to come to council and making the presentation. I will open this up to members of council for any questions or comments to the presenters.
Okay.
Councillor Olson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the presenters, and thank you for coming tonight. It's great to see you. When it comes to the assessment of the businesses, and I certainly appreciate the efforts that business is putting forward, is there a self-assessment process, or do you have an audit process where you go in and do the audit yourself?
We go in and we do the audits ourselves, and we have a checklist that we use that's very extensive, that talks about how open is it, how accessible is it in terms of the staff, how willing are they to change things to make it accessible, and based on if they get 80% or higher, they get the award. And also, if they don't get the award, what they can do is they can make changes to it, and we can come back and re-audit them to see how they've done.
Okay, thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, now is this based on the aging checklist for the Niagara region? Is that part of it? And then I'll do one of my own personal peeves is the size of writing on things, and I find that to be a difficulty.
Yeah, yes, sir. I'm fully aware of, Councillor Olson, I'm fully aware of what you're talking about with print and things like that. So one of our main focuses is when we do present or make signs for anything, it has to be 22 font to make it legible. As a person who is on the committee, we are on the committee with people that are blind, or we are on the committee with people that are short-sighted. So that is a concern for us that we'd like to make sure that is addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I want to say that I appreciate the work that is being done on these committees, and appreciate so much the work. So Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, it's our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Corr.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the committee, and thank you for your great presentation. And I just want to make you aware, I'm proud to have your logo on all my doors. And I know when you guys audited me, you made my place of business a lot better. So I appreciate all the hard work you have done. And anytime you want to come and audit again, I'd be happy to have you there. So thank you very much, both of you, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you, we will.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any. I guess I'd like to say that it shows the success of your committee that Port Colborne wanted to join the party and have the committee judge it and its businesses. So that's I think that's a great feather in your cap, and shows that you guys that your group is definitely helping the communities that you serve in, and we thank you for that.
Thank you, you're welcome, we hope so. Mhm.
I see Councillor. Oh, I'm sorry.
Mayor Junkin, I just want to say, from my own perspective, it's a privilege to serve on committees like this, and they are much needed within the community. And I just value the work that we do and the people that I've been able to interact with.
Well, I can tell you that the town is honored and blessed to have you on the committees. Thank you for that. And I see Councillor Hildebrandt wishes to speak.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for your report. I was on the town advisory committee and Jack was part of it. I certainly appreciate all the work you've done. Just a question. Do you actually audit the town's facilities as well?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So we don't do it personally, but through our consultant Donna Harrington, she does those. So what we've done is we've chosen five businesses or audits that the town has decided that they want audited, and when they want it done, Donna arranges that, and she has a team of people that goes through that.
Thank you very much for that reply. Really appreciate your work. Thank you.
No problem.
Excellent, excellent. Any other comments or questions to the presenters? Not seeing any. Again, want to thank you both for taking the time to appear before council and to continue doing your valuable work in the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that council receive the delegation from Reese Evans and Anne Valalte on behalf of the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee for information, and this vote begins with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Corr.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, and that does carry. Mr. Mayor, that does bring us to our next presenter, and we do have a registered delegation from Scott Snyder from Turkstra Mazda Associates here tonight. Mr. Snyder is legal counsel for the applicants of Kunda Park and Forest Park proposed developments. Thank you. And I think that he does have a few other people with him for support on his delegation. I will just remind the presenter that they do have 10 minutes. I do note that they do have a PowerPoint presentation. They are welcome to share their screen if they wish, or the town is happy to share the screen for them. Mr. Snyder, do you have a preference?
You could, I won't be spending a lot of time in it, actually. I assume, do members of council have it in before them without it being shared on screen, or does it need to be on screen?
Council did receive a copy of the presentation in their agenda packages.
Perfect. That's all I need. So I don't need it either way, actually, frankly. I'll just be a few minutes and then we can move on from there. Thank you.
Okay, so you do have 10 minutes, and you can go ahead.
Yes, and I do have with me my client who is here. And as you know from the package, I'm counsel to Sterling Realty, Niagara Inc. I think my client is well known to counsel. I have with me Nick Palumbo, who is with the traffic consultants RB Anderson, and we also have Matt Kernahan, who is the land use planner from Upper Canada Consultants, who is also here in case there's any questions that any of them can assist with as well. As you know from my presentation, I'm here on one narrow issue, and that is to request that council allow an exception to a motion that it passed earlier this year restricting road crossings over the Steve Bauer Trail. So I just want to step back for a second. My client has two draft plans before staff right now. One is the Kunda Park Phase 4 plan of subdivision, and the other one is the new Forest Park plan of subdivision. And those developments straddle the Steve Bauer Trail, as you know from the material. And I want to start with two key points. First is that my client fully supports the Steve Bauer Trail as an important asset to the community. We appreciate the intent behind the January 2021 resolution by council, which prohibits new road crossings of the trail. The safe functioning of the trail is an important community objective. There's no doubt about that. Secondly, it's important to know that the requested crossing of the trail is not required to support either plan of subdivision. Both plans can proceed and will proceed regardless of council's decision tonight. However, my client was asked by staff to evaluate all the access options available for the plans, and it evaluated three options. One is a road crossing of the trail, a single road crossing. The second is an emergency access across the trail only. So it would only be a crossing during emergency, and there would be a gate, as you know, as these emergency accesses work. And the third is no crossing of the trail, which would require a crossing of a nearby provincially significant wetland to the south. As I mentioned, my client retained RB Anderson to do an independent evaluation of all three of those options, and their conclusion was that the single full crossing was the best overall solution. The reasons related to trail safety, neighborhood connectivity, emergency access, trail operations, and impacts on the natural environment, and others, really. Now, your staff have evaluated the RBA assessment and also recommend the single crossing as per the staff report, which is on your agenda for later this evening. And I will leave it to staff to detail their reasons for this recommendation, but it is based on the RBA work and their own independent evaluation of those options that they feel are in the public interest. So based on RVA's work and staff's evaluation, we are requesting a council resolution to provide this single exception to the trail resolution as a proper balancing of all of the issues that have to be considered in community building. It's a complex issue, there's no doubt, as all land use planning decisions are complex decisions. No one can force this council to pass such a resolution. It's entirely up to you as to what to do. But I do want to stress this. These applications have been in the works for, and I'm new to this party, but I think for some 20 odd years. And we do need council's direction one way or the other now, so we can proceed with the plans depending on council's choice as to which access options it prefers. My client supports the single crossing of the trail as the best option that balances all of these interests most effectively. But if council declines to approve the crossing, my client will proceed with the plans and provide for the additional access across the PSW. I understand we already have an environmental assessment approval in hand to cross that PSW, so it will proceed. But it is really in council's hands to decide what the best access option is. So you've got before you the reasons we believe the single crossing is most appropriate. But again, we are in your hands on that, and we leave it to you to make that call after you've heard undoubtedly from staff as well. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have, and I look forward to the council's decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Snyder. Council, any questions or comments on this presentation? I see Councillor Olson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I guess I realize that there's no perfect solution to what we're looking at here. So I tried to rank my level of concern and reluctance. And I think we have a stewardship role to support life and diversity in the wetlands. I think that's our first obligation. Are you sure that when you say that there's an assessment then been done, and does the assessment include the crossing of the wetlands as not damaging? I'm worried about the continuity of the wetlands, because wetlands are deceptive and they're also very, very vulnerable.
Yes, I haven't read the environmental assessment work that was done. What I can advise is that it was approved, but to say that means it's without impact would be wrong. I'm certain of that. There's always going to be impact when you're dealing with crossing a wetland. So that's just a function of the nature of that kind of work. I don't think there can be any doubt that from an ecological point of view, the road crossing of the trail would probably be a preferable option. But the impacts are acceptable in crossing the wetland in any event. So it's one of the, it's, as I said, it's complex. It's one of the things you balance. And I think Ms. Weens will be speaking to it later, and her report certainly addresses this. And it's certainly staff's conclusion that from an ecological point of view, it's far preferable to cross the Stiebauer Trail than it is the wetland.
Okay, and my second point of reluctance is, and interest is in the existing residential areas. I'm worried about the impact of construction and traffic in that area, in those areas, because I think those are, in the Stella Street centered area there, it's kind of, it looks to me like there's, we could be faced with a lot of congestion there.
Yeah, and there's no doubt that RVA concluded that it would be preferable from that perspective to have the crossing, because it would minimize the amount of traffic that would have to use Stella and Kunda Park Boulevard in the construction phase. It just provides better connectivity across the community, and options from a traffic point of view. And now I'm talking like I'm a traffic expert. I'm not. I'm just a lawyer, but I've read enough of these things to know that connectivity and options are important issues from a traffic point of view, because it provides for balance, and that's what the crossing does do. We think in a superior way than using the extension of Kunda Park through the wetland.
Thank you. And then finally, Mr. Mayor, through you, the tree advisory, or the Pelham Tree Conservation Society, I think they made some useful suggestions in their study of the matter. Were they useful in developing any of your comments or your plans?
I don't have as good a handle on that, Councillor Olson, as maybe I should. But I know that the consultants and certainly our planners and my client have looked at all of this really carefully. It's been years in the making, and that's why I'm sure they would have considered that as well. But I can't speak to that in detail. If you want a more detailed answer, I could call on perhaps Mr. Kernahan or somebody else to speak to that. But I undoubtedly it was considered.
Okay.
No. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Olson. Any other questions, comments to the presenter? Not seeing any. Mr. Snyder, council appreciates you coming before us, and we appreciate your presentation and your time.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Kaur, seconded by Councillor Hahn. Be it resolved that council receive the delegation from Turkstra Mazda Associates regarding Kunda Park and Forest Park for information. And this vote begins with Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes,
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that carries. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does bring us to the adoption of minutes. And I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Hildebrandt. Be it resolved that council approve the following minutes as printed and circulated and read. 1. SC 15/2021, Special Council, September 20th, 2021, and RC 15/2021, Regular Council, September 20th, 2021. Mr. Mayor, I'd ask for you to call for any errors or omissions.
Okay, thank you. Have you heard the clerk? Is there any error or omissions in these minutes that council has noticed? Madam Clerk, not seeing any.
Thank you. This vote begins with Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yeah.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
yes,
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. That does carry. Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are at item 7 of the agenda. As council is aware, council may lift an item from the consent agenda if they wish to amend the resolution presented. If councilors simply have comments on an item, they are not required to lift. So members of council, if there are any items to lift, please do so advise.
Okay, I see a few hands. Let's go with Councilor Wink.
Yes, could I lift 8.3.2, please?
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. And I see Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to list 8.4.1, please.
Thank you. And Councillor Hildebrandt.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I was going to lift the same item because I declared a pecuniary interest and will not be participating in the discussion or the vote.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. So the 8.3.2 is the town policy regime requiring staff for vaccination. And the 8.4.1 is the appointment to the Peninsula West Power Inc. Board of Directors for Councillor Hildebrandt. That's fine. Those will be lifted for separate consideration. So I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Kaur. Be it resolved that the consent agenda items as listed on the October 4th, 2021 council agenda be received and the recommendations therein contained be approved, save and accept items 8.3.2 and 8.4.1. If council has any comments, now would be the time just to speak those comments.
Any comments on the other consent agendas? And Madam Clerk, I have one on 8.5.1, information correspondence items. I see this resident is commenting on the speeding of Pelham Street. And you may not be aware, but back in the 2016 or 2017, council passed a resolution that any comments about speeding on Pelham streets would be forwarded to the Niagara Regional Police in the Welland Division. Can you assure us that this will be done?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the clerk's department has been advised of that, and we will be ensuring that those comments are sent off through that policy.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions other than the lifted items? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This vote begins with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur,
Yes.
Councillor Olson,
Yes.
Councillor Stewart,
Yes.
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. That does carry. Mr. Mayor, that does bring us then to the lifted items. And the first one is the 8.3.2, which was lifted from Councillor Wink. And I'll just read the resolution into the record. We'll use the same movers and seconders. So it'll be moved by Councillor Wink and seconded by Councillor Kaur. And the resolution is, be it resolved that council receive. Oh. Sorry, this is the one. Oh. One moment. It is be it resolved that council receive report 2021-0169 town policy requiring staff vaccination for information. To you, Mr. Mayor, for comment.
Okay, Councillor Wink.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And thank you, CAO, for the report. I agree with everything that is mentioned in there. But I would like to make a motion that council is required to provide proof of vaccination. I believe it's hypocritical to ask municipal staff to follow vaccination policies, but not council. We are supposed to be leaders in our community and should be held at least equivalent or at a higher level than staff. Additionally, we are part of numerous advisory committees, which are comprised of volunteers. Essentially, councillors are volunteers of these committees because we are not compensated to be on these committees, yet all the other volunteers are required to follow town staff policies. So I'd like to make a motion that council be included.
Okay, and I see Councillor Kaur, are you offering to second this motion?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, would you like to have this that the report and the policy be referred back to staff to allow us to revise that report to bring back to council to include elected officials within the policy?
So no,
Councilor.
I would like to accept the town staff report and add a motion that council be vaccinated.
Okay, so then it would.
That proof of vaccination.
Certainly. So then the amendment would be to include and that the policy be revised to include that council has to be double vaccinated as well. Is that just the amendment to add on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
CAO, I saw that you had your hand up. Would like to make comment.
Mr. CAO?
He's always got something to say, doesn't he? If I may suggest an alternative way to accomplish the same goal, the policy is written to apply to staff and our volunteers over whom we exercise a degree of control. And of course, it has, although we don't focus on it, it does have a disciplinary aspect to it in the event of non-compliance. That, of course, would not and could not apply to any of the seven of you. Because as a legal point of law, you're not employees of the corporation, and B, it messes up the dynamic. We need to be accountable to you, not the other way around. So we can accomplish this goal. It's true we could write in that it applies to council as well, but then we have a document that we know part of it is simply wrong, internally in error, because the discipline stuff can't apply to any of you. But if you wish, if you wish it to have teeth, some enforcement, then we just import the language into the Councillor Code of Conduct, which applies to only you, and of course only you can pass. So that would be an equivalent way we could, if it's the, I don't know if it's the will of council yet to do so, but assuming you get to a vote that where you wish to have this being a binding policy, I throw it in the Councillor Code of Conduct, which is a good place to look, of course, for anything involving council.
Council Wink, are you acceptable to that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that as long as we get to, so do we have to refer it back to staff for further report for the code of conduct?
Well, there are a couple ways you could handle it. By motion, you could simply say we import the equivalent requirement into the Councillor Code of Conduct. You could pass that today, and the next meeting we'd simply show you as an information report how we've imported that in. And if you don't like it, you can tell us to change it, but it would be done tonight. In the alternative, you can ask for a staff report back, and we'll do some wordsmithing and give you the option to make it, presumably to make it binding at the next meeting. So 2 ways to get there, as you prefer.
Councillor Wink?
I'd rather have the former than the latter.
Okay, excellent. I see, before any further discussion, I see Councillor Stewart has her hand up.
Yes. Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Along with the amendment to the Code of Conduct that Councillor Wink is making, I think we need to add the language in there that if booster shots become mandatory, that that should be part of it as well.
Okay. Mr. CAO, any comment on that?
Well, I'm in full agreement with that, with everything Councillor Stewart's just said. But I will point out to Council that if the law, if public health guidance and then law go down that route, which at this moment we kind of expect them to do so, we actually have some of that language in our policy. So we would import it in, we'll make sure that's addressed. It's kind of addressed for us, but if we're not sufficiently happy with how it's addressed, we're going to bring you further changes. Frankly, it's an evolving public health situation, and none of us have been here down this road before, but we'll keep bringing you amendments as public health guidance changes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And perhaps Chief Limburner, any additional comments about the booster requirement?
Through Mr. Mayor, I think if we just use the language fully vaccinated, and as we evolve, if it's 3 or 4 shots or whatever it is, you always stay ahead of the game by being fully vaccinated.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that. Okay, any other comments on Councillor Hildebrandt?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I definitely have a very strong opinion about this. I have no problem showing my vaccination status or all the information I need to go into any building. However, I am basically a first-generation Canadian. My parents came here, and some of the people, their relatives ended up in South America, some of them ended up in the United States, some of them ended up Canada, running for freedom. And basically, the same thing happened with them. I'm a municipal councillor, and I'm not obligated as an officer and an employee to follow the Municipal Corporations Act the way I read it. It would be a disservice to all Canadians to create a precedent whereby people feel obligated to disclose private medical information to an employer, of which I'm not. Because I don't mind stating it to an employer, but I'm not an employee of the town. So I will not be participating in unrequired disclosures. I believe it's a danger, precedents to set. My parents have been through it. I've seen the history that they went through. I've seen the terror. We came here not speaking the language. It was a terrible situation. My mother had such terrible fear until she died of the regime she left. And that's what they left. So I'm all in favor of vaccinations. I have no problem showing all my data, but I will not be voting to approve this as legislation for a councillor on a municipal council. If health authorities can't divulge my personal information, I'm not going to be under any social pressures to disclose my personal information as a municipal councillor. Thank you.
Thank you for those words, Councillor Hildebrandt. Mr. CA, well, I don't know, I hate to put you on the spot, Mr. CAO, but I will put you on the spot. You're a lawyer, any comments on how this would affect the motion going forward?
Look, this has been an issue that's divided communities. It's divided councils here in Niagara. They're having extreme difficulties with this exact concept in Grimsby. They're having difficulties with this concept in West Lincoln, by way of, and I think in Waynfleet, but I don't speak on that with authority. There are two answers. The first is, look, vis-a-vis staff, everyone in life has decisions to make, but we've ultimately said, if you want to be employed here, and barring the two charter rights exemptions, you have to be, at this point in time, it's double vaccinated. Maybe at some point in time it'll be triple, but for now, that's double vaccination. And that's binding, and your choices, if you don't apply for qualify for one of the two exemptions, it's be double vaccinated or no longer be employed here. That's where we're at with staff. You can bind yourselves. I'm not. Well, actually, we drafted this policy so that it does not address elected officials. We were not trying to drag you into this debate. That being said, if you're looking at it, I can tell you that no staff member wants to engage in a multi-hour meeting with any of you if you're not vaccinated, and we have no idea. I have personal knowledge that the mayor is vaccinated because I've seen it. But beyond that, we just assume you are. Also, we're meeting by Zoom, so that's fine. But as things return to otherwise, I would imagine, to the point of work refusal, that your staff would prefer you to be double vaccinated. That's not exactly what Councillor Hildebrandt's point is, and I'm certainly not entering into a debate, or I don't mean to argue that point. I think I understand that and why that would have been traumatic. That being said, you can choose whether you pass. You have to have a code of conduct, but you get to pick what's in it. Broadly speaking, there are a couple of things that are mandatory, but beyond that, you've chosen a code of conduct. You've taken a look at it since you've taken office, and you get to sort of pick the thresholds and standards by which you're judged. You can choose to add this into that. You can choose to have it as a standalone policy. But I mean, the code of conduct says you're supposed to comply with. There aren't too many corporate policies that apply to elected officials. There are a couple, and it says you're supposed to comply with those. So it's still going to go through the code of conduct at some point in time if there is a problem or challenge. So whether it's a standalone policy or in the code of conduct, if there's a dispute, the decider and the forum is the integrity commissioner. So in that sense, it sort of doesn't matter. Happy to help. And I still don't know if it's the will of council to pass this, but assuming it is, for sake of this discussion, you can go either way forward. You can choose to make things binding upon yourselves, and that's what a majority is. There you have it. There are two exemptions, of course, right? Creed and medical. So it's not binding on absolutely all of society to start with.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. CAO. Councillor Corr.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. How's the Niagara Region councillors handling this? And you sit on that chamber.
The Niagara Region councillors, we all had to, I believe it was by September 22nd, we all had to tell the clerk what our vaccination status was. And if you're not fully vaccinated, you're not allowed, as a member of the public, then you're not allowed to go anywhere inside the regional buildings. And of course, you wouldn't be allowed to, if you can't go in the regional buildings, then you wouldn't be able to be in person on any committee meetings. But as a regional councillor, I had to divulge to the regional clerk, as did all the other councillors, our status of vaccination.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Councillor Hildebrandt?
Here you, Mr. Mayor. So whatever declaration we make, we'd be meeting with the clerk and providing her with the information. Is that what you're suggesting?
Councillor, Mr. CAO?
Should that be your preferred course of action, we can choose to do that with the clerk or with human resources, as you prefer. While as a point of law, you're not employees, as a practical matter, of course, you are on the payroll. So we could put that, there's two places we can store confidential information. The one's the clerk's office and the other's the HR office. So in either event, if that's your will, that's how we will protect those items of information.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Court?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So we give the information to the clerk through either a personal letter or stating that we did get our second vaccination and or through email.
Mr. CEO?
Well, we could handle that any number of ways. I mean, frankly, I'm sure most of you have been to a restaurant in the last 10 days. And the level of proof that satisfies the restaurant would satisfy us. That's sort of what we're doing at the MCC. So if you have the app or if you have a laminated card, shameless plug now, the library will freely assist any resident of Pelham in creating a laminated card. If you just come to them with a letter or an email, they will do the rest. They'll print it, they will laminate. It's a wonderful service being offered to help people who don't maybe have access to the resources to do that sort of thing. But back to your point, whatever level of proof you already have, if you wanted to email that, scan that, if you just wanted to show it to the clerk or human resources, we would then, I think, take the appropriate steps. So we certainly wouldn't be looking to make this difficult for anyone, should this be your will.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Go ahead, Councillor Hildebrandt.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make sure I'm not labeled an anti-vaxxer or I'm against vaccines. That is absolutely not my point. I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that.
Yeah, yep. Great, thank you. And if I may, so Councillor, are you saying that if we were to make it so that you could divulge either to HR or to the clerk that you would do that? Or
Absolutely, if it's the will of council.
yes,
I'm ruled by a majority.
yes,
I think like the rest of us.
yes.
I would come and have a chat with Holly, I guess.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor. I did have Councillor Corr up first. Go ahead, Councillor.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I understand Councillor Hildebrandt's situation. My parents came from the same situation, and without adding anything, I prefer to give the information to the clerk.
Okay, thank you. And now Councillor Hahn.
Yes, through the mayor and to the mayor, actually. So just for clarification, so when you said that the Niagara region only asked then if you're vaccinated, so they didn't require proof then? It's just yes or no? There was no requirement to show proof?
I honestly, I know I didn't show proof. I guess they took our word for it. No, you know what it was? No, excuse me, because I haven't done the second step. So September 22nd, we had to let the clerk verbally know, and then I believe it's either October 15th or October 22nd, we have got to either show up at the council, at the regional building, or send proof via photo or email. But at September 22nd, it was verbal, and then we had a month after that to back up our condition.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions or comments? And we will call the vote on the, have you got something written, Madam Clerk?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So this is the amendment being put forward by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Corr. And it's that the motion be amended to include, and that council direct staff to revise the council code of conduct to include that members of council are required to be fully vaccinated. And I just put in bracket, including any booster shots if necessary, bracket. And then at the next meeting or so, myself and the CAO will bring a revised policy for council's consideration.
Does that suit your cause, Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Okay, and Councillor Corr, you second it. You happy with that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion, discussion on the motion as presented? Not seeing any. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Thank you. So this is for the amendment. So Councillor Hahn,
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt,
No.
Councillor Kaur,
Yes.
Councillor Olson,
Yes.
Councillor Stewart,
Yes.
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that does carry. So then it brings us to the main motion as amended. If there's any discussion?
Any discussion on the motion as amended? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. And I'll be using the same movers and seconders, which is Councillor Wink and Councillor Kaur. And this vote also begins with Councillor Hahn,
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt,
No.
Councillor Kaur,
Yes.
Councillor Olson,
Yes.
Councillor Stewart,
Yes.
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. And that does also carry.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that brings us to the last item, which was lifted. And this was lifted from Councillor Stewart. And just for clarity, I'll read it into the record. So this is a motion put forth by Councillor Wing, seconded by Councillor Kaur. Be it resolved that Council receive the correspondence from Peninsula West Power Inc. advising that the Pelham representative term for Councillor Hildebrandt expire on December 31st, 2021, and that the town of Pelham nominates Councillor Hildebrandt to be appointed for subsequent one-year term ending December 31st, 2022, and that Peninsula West Power Inc. and Councillor Hildebrandt be so advised. And Councillor Hildebrandt has declared a conflict of interest, and I do see that he's muted himself, and he has turned his video camera off, and I have noted that for the minutes. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, and Councillor Stewart, you lifted this item. Obviously, we'll let you speak first on it.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I believe that we should extend not just a 1 year for Councillor Hildebrandt, but to grant him a 3-year additional term on the board. He's done remarkable work on the board in favor of the residents of the town of Pelham, working with Ontario Hydro to get regulated even rates for all of the people within the town of Pelham. Depending on where you live, you get charged different rates for your electricity. And I believe that by extending Councillor Hildebrandt's term, he will be able to get this important work done on behalf of the residents. And I know that the letter that we did see from Mr. Walker stated that there shouldn't be more than, anyone shouldn't serve more than 5 years. But the question is, how many years has Mr. Walker been on the board? So, you know, there definitely is a precedent there. And then also West Lincoln has extended their representatives until December 2024. So it's not a precedent, but I think it would be in the town's best interest to keep Councillor Hildebrandt on this board. Thank you.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. So what I'm understanding is that Councillor Stewart is putting forth an amendment that the motion be amended to strike 1-year term ending December 31st, 2022 to be replaced with a 3-year term ending December 31st, 2024. If that's correct, she would need a seconder.
Councillor Kaur, you willing a second?
Yes.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so then it is on the floor and is open for discussion.
Okay, any discussion on the amendment? I guess, we got other, okay, Councillor Olson?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think I would be in favor of a 1-year term simply because I don't think it's, I want to tie the hands of succeeding councils. I'd like them to be able to make their own appointment, but I'd be delighted to see a 1-year term.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I think I saw Councillor Wink's hand.
So let me start off by saying I have no hesitation in recommending Councillor Hildebrandt for this position. My concern is in I think if council looks back at when we got into council, there was certain members of the previous council that were on the board that we had issues with that individual continued on for a considerable period of time. If you look at all our advisory committees, it's all for the term of our council. And I think this more or less is an advisory committee, so I would certainly favor Councillor Hildebrandt, but just to the end of term of council.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other? I see Councillor Hahn.
Yes, through the mayor. So in the case of myself, I'm also on Penn West board, and if we're following suit, then it would be a 3-year term, just like it would be for me. So I exceed past my term on council, in theory. So I'm not sure why this would be any different. It's good for the goose is good for the gander. It's be treating me differently than we're treating Councillor Hildebrandt then.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Stewart, I thought I saw your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Being on a committee of council is considerably different than sitting on the board of a utility. And, as I stated, the work that Councillor Hildebrandt is doing on behalf of the citizens of the town of Pelham, he's put so much research and time into this and working with a huge utility company to try to make things fair. And I think by blunting his term, we could lose the leverage that he's gaining with this huge company. That's why I believe we need to keep Councillor Hildebrandt on.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other comments, questions? If I may, I would like to extend my comment. I also remember the first month or two, couple of months that this council sat, that we had members that were quite upset, if that's maybe not too strong a word, that we had to have other members sit on the board, and we had no recourse to put what we considered our own people into it. I know we were upset, and I have no problem with the 1-year term, but I also don't relish tying the hands of council by extending a 3-year term. Again, Councillor Hildebrandt has done a great service on the committees that he's on, but I won't support this amendment just because of the going outside the term of this council. Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Court?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Does it have to be an elected official to be on this board, or could it be a private citizen? Get elect.
It's a private citizens can also be put on.
So if he doesn't seek re-election or he doesn't get re-elected, he'd just be a private citizen sitting on the board for an extra 2 years. And you couldn't ask for a better man to do the job.
Okay. Thank you for those comments. Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any. I'll ask the clerk to call the vote on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And so this is for the amendment moved by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Kaur. And this vote begins with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
No.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
No.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
No.
Mr. Mayor, that is a 3-3 tie, and procedurally, a tie is a defeat. That does bring us back to the original main motion.
Okay. Any discussion, questions on the original motion presented? Don't see any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is put forth by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Kaur, and this is for the subsequent 1-year appointment. And as there's no more discussion, this vote begins with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn,
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and that does carry. And that does conclude our business from the consent agenda. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that does bring you to, I believe that it's reports from council.
Oh, do we have to, I'm sorry, Madam Clerk, should we notify Councillor Hildebrandt?
Oh, I apologize. Yes, Councillor Hildebrandt, that discussion is over. You can return to the meeting, please.
Oh, I wonder if you'll have to phone him, if he's on mute.
I will email Councillor Hildebrandt. He may have physically left the room.
I'll send him a text.
Oh, thank you, Mr.
Okay,
CEO.
thank you, Mr. CAO. Madam Clerk, where are we?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are on staff reports. And the first report is from the Clerk's Department, and it is a motion put forth by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Olson. And it is, be it resolved that Council receive report 2021-0166 Clerks 2022 Council meeting schedule, and that the 2022 Council meeting schedule as provided in Appendix A to this report be approved, and that staff be directed to publish the 2022 Council meeting schedule to the Town of Pelham's website. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, any questions or discussion on this item of the agenda? Councillor Stewart?
Yes, I'm making sure I'm in the right place here. It's the meeting schedule for next year?
Yes, and that's correct.
Okay, I understand adjusting the schedule to, to move meetings to Tuesdays for statutory holidays that we've always done. But I'm wondering about accommodating Valentine's Day. I would say that most people that celebrate Valentine's Day don't do it on the Monday or the Wednesday or whenever it falls, but that's traditionally something that's done on, everybody goes out on Friday or Saturday or take their lovely mom out for lunch on the Sunday of Valentine's weekend. I don't see moving that to the Tuesday.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I may, certainly the Clerk's Department is happy to do whatever council wishes. We took that certainly just because it was on the, we were using the world's religious holidays, and we were trying to accommodate for all of the major holidays for Christianity, Catholicism, Judaism, for Muslim, etc. But we're certainly happy, if that's what council wishes, to have the meeting on the Monday for the 14th of February. We're happy to make that amendment.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you for bringing that up, Councillor. I'm sort of a little shocked by your lack of romanticism. Any other questions or comments on this item? And so, Madam Clerk, would that, do we need to vote on that, or can we take that as a staff direction?
I can take that as a staff direction. I don't think that you need to formalize that as a vote unless, as a motion, unless you wish to. We have heard that and we're happy to make that change. Are you happy and satisfied with that, members of council?
Councillor Stewart, would that suit your needs if it's a staff direction?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless I don't hear any other objections from any other members of council. So we'll take that to receive this schedule as amended. I'll just change that to as amended.
Okay.
And unless there's any other councillor discussion?
Any other discussion on the schedule? I see Councillor Olson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to point out that every day is Valentine's Day in this house.
Thank you, Councillor, and I'm sure you scored some brownie points there.
I don't think so.
Any other serious questions to do with the schedule? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. And this vote begins with Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, and that does carry. Mr. Mayor, that brings us to our next item. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Stewart, second by Councillor Hahn. Be it resolved that Council receive Report 2021-0157 Town of Pelham Wastewater Model and GIS Update, and that Council approve and award the engineering assignment to GM Blue Plan Engineering in the amount of $75,500 plus HST to complete the update, and that the Town of Pelham Wastewater Model and GIS Update be funded through capital accounts WST 01-20 Sanitary and I Study and WST 03-21 Sanitary I Study Program, Planned Replacement and Rehabilitation. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, council, any questions, comments? And I see Councillor Hildebrandt.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the report. To the Director of Public Works, the report states that in 2016 and 17, the examination of the CCTV information submitted did not meet the inspection requirements. The question I have is the report doesn't tell me whether the data from 2017 to 21 met the inspection requirements. Can you comment on that?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Part of a capital works program that the town undertakes, we do inspections of our sanitary sewer system. We do it annually. That's a capital project that's approved through council at the budgeting time. The value of that assignment is about $100,000. And what we try to do is systematically inspect the sanitary sewer pipes. And we try to get around the whole network once every 3 years. So with respect to that particular point, the original assignment performed by GM Blue Plan to set up our sanitary sewer model was done in 2017. And the information that we received prior to that, with which would be the 2016 year, didn't meet the standards that they wanted to see the data in. Since the GM Blue Plan completed the original assignment, we've now been writing our RFPs for our CCTV and camera inspections to receive the data in a format that we can easily use as part of our model. And so what they're saying in that statement is that the 2016 data is basically in written reports that they're going to have to basically interpret the information in that to come up with the condition data. They won't have the data in the format that we now receive it in. So 2017 and on, we have been receiving the CCTV camera inspections and information in the data that we need. Sorry, in the format that we need.
Yeah, thank you. That was my concern. My concern was going forward that we were getting the data as we required it for the inspection agency. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions, comments on this item? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this vote begins with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that does carry. Mr. Mayor, this brings you to your next item on the agenda, and I have a motion put forth by Councillor Hildebrandt, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that Council receive Report 2021-0168 Kunda Park and Forest Park Subdivision Road Network and Crossing of Steve Bauer Trail for information, and that Council allow an exemption to its motion restricting road crossings over the Steve Bauer Trail by adopting option 1 in this report, which contemplates and allows one road crossing with pedestrian access over the Steve Bauer Trail to connect the proposed Kunda Park Phase 4 subdivision and the proposed Forest Park subdivision, and that Council directs staff to prepare the bylaw to dedicate the proposed Steve Bauer Trail crossing as a public road allowance for Council's consideration. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Any comments or questions on this item? And I see Councillor Hildebrandt.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Director of Planning, just a couple of quick questions. And after that, I'll let the rest of the council speak before I voice what I think my plans are. The first question is, are there any plans for another public meeting prior to any decision made on any of the options? And the other thing is, no matter which option is selected or presented, does that come before council for approval before finalization?
Madam Director of Planning?
Mr. Mayor, through you, yes, we would consider that there would be further public meetings. We would need a revised draft plan of subdivision application for both the Kunda Park and Forest Park. And that would then allow us to have another public meeting on those subdivisions. And then ultimately, the approval of the draft plans also rests with council in terms of the decision-making on those subdivisions.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions on this report? Not seeing any. I guess, oh, go ahead, Councillor Hildebrandt. Go ahead,
I'm
sir.
not sure that it's a question on the report, but I see what the report says. Because basically, the report wants us to approve the trail as a part of the road network. And to qualify it as not a road allowance. Is that correct to the Director of Planning?
Ms. Weens?
Mr. Mayor, through you, the report is requesting that council approve an exemption to your motion, which would allow a road to cross the Steve Bauer Trail. And then that portion where the road would cross would become road allowance. And so it would only be that small area where the road would cross would become road allowance. It's not the entire trail.
Councillor Hildebrandt?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, at this time, then I'll be declaring where I stand on this. Obviously, I believe the Steve Bauer Trail is a community asset. It belongs to the 18,000 existing residents in Pelham. It is not for sale. It is not to be rented out. It's not a road allowance. So I will not be approving the crossing as a public road allowance, similar to the vote that I projected earlier on. That being said, there's some other things I want to add to it. Is the fact that the other options basically either want you to cross the wetlands, which I'm also not in favor of, and the other option is to only have one exit out of the subdivision, which is also not acceptable option. I believe there are other alternatives to solve these issues. And at this time, I'm just going to stop there because the rest of council needs to hear what they think. But basically, that's my basic stand because I believe there are options. And those aren't the three options we've presented are not the only three options. So that's my position. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Corr, did I see your hand?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I will not be supporting this motion. The trail belongs to the people of our community. And again, we always have to bend backwards for developers. I just wondered if a developer would give a portion of his property to put a trail through his subdivision and make an amendment to that. Again, this trail belongs to the people of our great community, and I'm not going to waver of letting anybody cross it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hahn?
Through the mayor, I would agree with my fellow councillors. We made a decision back in February, January, and I still stand firm on that. I represent the constituents, and I have many constituents that would be appalled to think that we're going to do a crossing now and go against our decision that we already made. At the same time, my constituents in Kunda are not going to be pleased about having only one entrance and exit, which routes all the traffic in front of their houses, which they didn't bargain on many years ago when they went into that area. So I'd like to see another option presented, because certainly having just one way in and one way out just doesn't work for me. So I won't be supporting this.
Before I go on, Councillor, Director of Planning, Ms. Weens, I believe that isn't the, and perhaps correct me if I'm wrong, isn't the with the wetlands, that's one way in, but there's, isn't there also another one already? With the wetlands, crossing of the wetlands, there would be two entrances and exits. Am I not right?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you, if there is the crossing of the wetland, that means that Kunda Park Boulevard would be extended through to the wetland, and they would also use the access off of Stella Street. So that would be the two access routes into the Kunda Park Phase 4 subdivision. And so it would be via Stella Street and Kunda Park Boulevard.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Thank you. Councilor Wink?
Yes. So I was the one who made the original motion, who brought that forward about crossing the trail, and I'm not going to waver from that. It's an important piece of property for our town, and there's been great support over this council's decision with respect to the crossing of the trail or non-crossing of the trail. Just a question, and maybe this is going to get to Councillor Hildebrandt's alternatives, but Ms. Weens, if you can make, through you, Mr. Mayor, if you can make comment about that strip of land that the developer owns that would require Phase 4 architectural or archaeological assessment, and the exit onto Port Robinson Road. Could you make comment on that, please?
Ms. Weens?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you, the report did reference that there are those additional lands owned by the developer. They run alongside the playground area or the field area of the Glen A. Green School, and in between the field and the Steve Bauer Trail. There is some significant archaeological resources there that are indigenous resources. There's been some archaeological work done on it, so we know that there is some significant resource there. To mitigate those resources, to put in a road is going to cost several hundreds of thousands of dollars. You're probably looking anywhere between $400,000 and $800,000, could be even more. And then you'll also end up with a very awkward intersection where you will have that road coming out and onto Port Robinson Road. And you'll have an awkward intersection with the Station Street. So you will have the trail between two streets, which will be very awkward and will create, transportation issues with respect to the alignment of that intersection, which will not be will not be very safe, and will create safety issues and issues around traffic movements through that intersection, because you'll have essentially a five-way intersection.
Councillor?
Yeah, thank you for that. And I too have, regardless of what the cost is to put in the road, the awkwardness of that intersection just would not work. The presentation by the solicitor of Mr. Delisio had indicated that they have done environmental assessments and they've got approvals to cross the wetland. We definitely need two exits and entrances to the subdivision, and I would be favoring option 3.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hahn?
Through the mayor, so to the director of planning. So the NPCA, have they approved of the wetland development and putting, I guess, is it a low-level bridge or is it a road, whatever that is? They would approve that? I'm surprised, but do we have that information?
Ms. Weens?
Mr. Mayor, through you, the applicant, prior to going through the Forest Park subdivision, did go through an environmental assessment review process to allow for a road through the wetland. And so they have received the approvals. The MPCA commented with respect to that. It's the least preferred option. Provincial policy does allow for linear infrastructure through a wetland, but that is it, and the road would qualify for that. It creates a number of issues, not just with respect to the road, but the extension of municipal sanitary sewer and water lines through the wetland as well. So there's a lot to consider. Whether that is a bridge, a concrete box culvert, and those kind of details still need to be worked out. That would be at a detailed engineering design stage. I don't know what that would look like, but it is going to still require several hurdles to get through. But the concept of allowing a road and crossing through the wetland has been approved. And it is something that the MPCA would allow, because policy does allow for it, but it's the least preferred option.
Thank you.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I won't support this either. We made a firm decision to not allow crossings, and I'm going to stand by that. I don't believe that any of the three options are acceptable. I understand there may be a strip of land to the south of Glen Green School belonging to the school board that could possibly be put into use. And there are other ways to cross a trail, either by going over, by going under. I think there are other avenues to explore before we just go ahead and say, sure, throw a road across the trail. I am not in favor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other, Councillor Hahn?
Mayor, thank you. Yes, I know some time ago during a previous council meeting a while back, I had mentioned about contacting whether it was the town of Pelham facilitating a meeting with a Sterling owner, realty owner, and a school board, but I'm not sure if that actually happened or not. But I'm just wondering if there was any discussion at any point in time with the school board with regard to using the possibility of maybe even another entrance, which would be off of South Pelham before the development, right, before the Pinda Park development that exists now, but the strip of land between where the school ends and it's just grass, right? If there was ever discussion of having that as access.
Thank you, Councillor. Ms. Weens, do you know of any such discussions?
Mr. Mayor, through you, I am certainly aware that the developer had reached out to the school board. The school board was not open to any discussions with respect to exchange of land or selling land for development purposes.
Yes, and I've had, I'm sorry, go ahead, Councillor Hahn.
Yeah, sorry, just to add to that. So for development purposes, yes, but not for the building of homes, but rather for access. So it would be for access purposes, because if you look at the end of Stella, that's a dead end. I'm just looking at all the options. I want to hear all the other options because I don't love the three that are on the table. So, you know, whether there's that or whether there's the other option that Councillor Hildebrandt will be bringing forward.
Councillor, Madame Weens.
Mr. Mayor, through you, I was not involved in those discussions, so I can't say. Development purposes would have been for the road access. That would have been the only need for additional land from the school board. It wasn't for homes, but it would have been for access. My understanding is that those discussions did not go anywhere with the school board.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hahn, any more?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Olson?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CAO, do we know if the title to the swamp has been, the swamp area, has that been transferred, or?
If we do know, I do not. I don't know if Director Weens has better knowledge than I. We can get back to you.
Mr. Mayor, through you know, though, that wetland area is still owned by the developer. It would come to the town when the plan of subdivision gets registered. At this point in time, it's still in the ownership of the developer.
Okay, thank you.
And Ms. Weens, refresh my memory, and then you can, I guess you can go hectares, but is that PSW, is that about 7 or 8 acres? Or 3.5 hectares? Do you remember off the top of your head?
Let me just look that up. Sorry, just give me a
Oh,
second.
I guess I could have done that. Okay.
Just need to increase my screen here. Yes, it's just under 3 hectares in size.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So about 5 acres.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Any other comment? I see Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Hahn and I were both referencing the same strip of land just to the south of Glen Green School for an access that would go down to the dead end of Stella Street. I'm wondering if possibly there may be better discussions made with the school board if it was a 3-way discussion involving the town, the developer, and the school board.
Yes, well, obviously that's something that could be looked at down the road. I know I've talked to the developer, and as Ms. Weens indicated, the school board had absolutely no inclination at all to sell any of that land. Whether they would change their mind, who knows? Councillor Corr?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CEO, can we not appropriate that property for development from the school board?
So the Expropriations Act gives us wide latitude to expropriate land, but here's the but. There are a couple of public entities in this world that have expropriation powers equal to ours, and those are hydro companies, hospitals, school boards, and municipalities. So we don't typically expropriate each other's lands because the short version is they could just expropriate them back. So generally speaking, we use our expropriation powers on typically on lands that are privately held.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. CEO.
But it would make some lawyers wealthy, and I mean, that's sort of inherently good sometimes.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? Councillor Hildebrandt.
Through you, I'm not sure whether the clerk's department was able to show the little photographs I had of what some other communities have done in similar circumstances when they've been trying to cross the trail. But I think it's pretty unique, and I think some of those solutions aren't that expensive, and that's the kind of solution I'm looking for the developer to come up with, because I believe it's incumbent on him to serve this community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hildebrandt. Obviously an interesting picture there, for sure. Councillor Hahn.
The mayor, so looking at those pictures, so it seems a win-win. So number one for me is safety. So the people who are using the trail, safety, I just can't see the connection being safe with pedestrians and vehicular traffic. So having that bridge/tunnel that you just saw on the screen would provide for safety. That's the utmost concern for me. Number two, it at the same time provides for that connection. So it's referred to several times over again in this report, the connectivity between the forest and the Kunda Park subdivisions. So having that connectivity, which is the intent apparently of the official plan anyhow, well, it provides for that. And three, it also then provides for not having to disrupt and develop the swamplands, right? Those are sensitive areas. So if we could endeavor to look into that, this opportunity might serve all three. And I think it's worth looking into from my perspective.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Mr. CEO, did I see your hand?
But you did. So that's actually a fascinating concept, and I'm sure no one on staff has any idea what degree of interest the developer would have in it. But I think then you want a different motion than because right now it sounds like we're heading towards saying absolutely no crossing of the trail, and it sounds like you might want a slightly different motion saying we don't approve of trail crossings, but we'd be prepared to entertain designs or proposals that resulted in, overpasses that are take into account the unique flora and fauna and are designed to integrate into the landscape or words to that effect. So that right now it sounds like we're tracking towards a strong no vote, which is certainly your right, but that might not reflect what where your actual stance is.
Thank you for that, Mr. CAO. I believe you've come pretty close to hitting the nail on the head. Ms. Weens, you obviously work with this developer. Obviously, you can't put words in his mouth. Do you think that it would be council's worthwhile for this council to do whatever we have to do to defer a decision until the developer has one last kick at the can? I realize if he's watching this meeting, he's thinking of the 20 years that he's got into it. But if at the same time, 20 years plus 6 months or 3 months or another month, maybe that doesn't add up to a hill of beans. Any comment on that?
Well, Mr. Mayor, through you, I think it would be helpful to, the crossing, if it's something like a road going under the trail and or the road going over the trail as an option, as some kind of overpass or underpass or tunnel. Those are things that certainly could be explored. I think if you're going to do that, understand that there could be some disruption to the trail, certainly during construction, but it would only be a temporary situation, not long-term. And, I would have to have the developer look at it. Also, our engineering staff would need to look at it to understand, again, the geometry of such crossings and how it could work and integrate with the street network. So it would require a bit of effort to go through and do that, but anything's an option, anything's possible, and it could be an option to be considered.
Okay, I appreciate that. Obviously, if they're going to go under it, you have the lead-ins and the lead-outs, but smarter people and I can figure out just how much area that those lead-ins and lead-outs would take. I, for one, I was ready to support this. Obviously, a vast minority within council. If I did support it, I realize this council made that resolution or motion or whatever we did back then. I just to utterly destroy a wetland, and don't tell me about bridges, don't tell me about culverts. That argument reminds me of that Chinese developer down in Niagara Falls. He tried to convince everybody, well, we can move the wetland. And I'm happy to say that never happened. How do you move a wetland and not disturb it? Same thing that's here, whether you bridge, culvert, the thing is you're putting roads through it, you're putting infrastructure through it. And myself, it's another case of the human race not wanting to be inconvenienced. So let's make Mother Nature pay the price. That's basically what we're coming down to. So I'm sorry. I'm actually, if we can do this another way, that picture, of course, was intriguing that Councillor Hildebrandt showed. That's great. So I would be all for deferring or whatever Madame Clerk suggested we do. But when it gets right down to it, I would vote for the trail crossing and the preservation of the wetland. But Madame Clerk, do you see what
yes.
we can do?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think there are potentially two options available to council. A councillor could bring forth a motion to amend this main motion to basically strike paragraph 2 and 3 and to direct staff to work with the developer to develop further options available for council's consideration with respect to the trail crossings. items such as the overpass, underpass, or tunnel. So a councillor could bring a motion, or if council did wish, they could certainly refer the report back. I suggest the amendment because that would allow council to still receive this report for information and to direct staff to further work with the developer, but I'm open to any other suggestions that the CAO or Director Wiens has.
Any comments from Director of Planning or the CAO on this direction?
Certainly, we appreciate the direction from council. It will help focus the discussions with the developer. And I think we would need to, involve or have to do some preliminary engineering work to understand what's involved in this as well, to determine if it's a reasonable option.
Okay, thank you. Mr. CAO, any additional?
I think the goal amongst council, at the risk of telling you what to do, is to make it abundantly clear in the motion that you don't accept a level road crossing over the trail. You have complete power and authority to decide that either way, and I think we've heard clearly that a majority of you wish that to be the case. So long as the motion included, but we're open to sort of statements, then the developer can proceed forth either, keeping in mind they've got permits, unfortunately, for bridge works through environmentally sensitive areas, through a wetland. They can either come back and hopefully have good discussions with us about some sort of bridge solution and the viability of that. And we don't know whether that's an engineering possibility or not. I'm sure there'll be some challenges, but it's a fascinating concept, and maybe it's the way out of this dilemma.
Okay.
So you just want clarity in the motion that I think that a majority of council do not want a trail crossing unless it's under or over, with bells and whistles.
Okay, thank you. Comments on what the CAO has just said, Councillor Hahn?
Through the mayor, yes, I was going to, you took the words out of my mouth there, not level crossing. So whatever it is, it's not a level crossing. And to the director of planning, so I've lived in a few different areas of Canada, and I can tell you, so for instance, Stanley Park, even in areas in Victoria, this is not uncommon at all to have trails and then the roads going over top. It's quite common. So there's probably several examples that when you're having your discussion, you can probably pull up on a PowerPoint to help facilitate the discussion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other comments or questions? So let's see what the clerk came up with. Madam Clerk?
Thank you. So the potential amendment could be that the motion be amended to strike paragraph 2 and 3, and that council directs staff to work with the developer to develop further options available for council's consideration with respect to trail crossings other than level crossings, bracket, overpass, underpass, tunnel, etc. Is that satisfactory?
Is there a member of council that will put this motion forward? Councillor Hahn, thank you. And a member of seconding, we have Councillor Wink. Okay, so discussion on this motion then, or we've been discussing it all along. Any further discussion or questions on this motion before we call the vote? Not seeing any. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is for the amendment, and this vote begins with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
No.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the amendment does carry. That brings you to the main motion as amended. For discussion, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion on the main motion with this amendment? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. This vote also begins with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
No.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that does carry, Mr. Mayor. That does bring you to your next item on the agenda, and that's a council report from Councillor Hildebrandt with respect to the regional waste collection.
Thank you. Councillor Hildebrandt, you have the floor.
Thank you, members of council, public, and staff. It's an honor to be a representative on CLC 12, Regional Waste Management Committee. One of the major accomplishments we've had during our term is to update our terms of reference. Basic housekeeping, besides basic housekeeping, the most significant addition was dealing with alternative waste management technologies and related initiatives. The region has established a subcommittee that provided an update of EFW, energy from waste, MWP, mixed waste processing, AD, aerobic digestion, as an example of many things that we're looking at. Region-wide waste tonnage since the start of the pandemic has decreased by 15%. Garbage composition has also changed. The green bin tonnage is up 4,000 to 5,000 tons per year. What we do not know is the behavior reflective of people being at home during the pandemic, or is it just people changing their behavior? We're not sure what's caused these changes. Site 12, as you know, is an engineered dump, one of the waste facilities, one of the few in Ontario. We believe, because we're on that committee, plus it's an engineered dump, it's the best facility around. And so what there's going to be, for those interested in the waste metrics, the regional website is planning an update which gives us a handle on garbage, hazardous waste, tonnage per household, give us a clearer picture of how well we are handling waste. I can tell you that the number of tons of waste that comes into the site, which comes from Grimsby, Lincoln, West Lincoln, and Pelham, is 50 tons per day. It's a lot of garbage. It's 16,000 tons of waste annually. What we did recently, we've had 2 meetings, one via Zoom and one was in person, to go over the capital expenditures and actually go over what the capital expenditures covered this year and what's happening at the facility. And you'll be happy to know that we've got 43 more years of extended life at this facility. We're far beyond the extended life, and the improvements we're making all the time is significant. One of the other things is the number of cars that enter the facility have remained, the vehicles has remained the same, between 300 and 320 per day since 2018. If you ever go there, don't go there Tuesday and Saturdays. Those are the busiest days. That's when the brush bypass is available. So thank you again for allowing me to be your representative. And although waste may not be an exciting topic for most of you, it's exciting for me to be on this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hildebrandt. When I was on council from 14 to 17, I was the representative on the Road 12, and it was very interesting how the waste was being treated and what was being done to reduce the waste. So yeah, I know it's a great thing to be a part of, that's for sure. Before I turn it over to council, there was I believe there was a Goodwill depot at the Road 12 site. Is that still there with COVID, or have they had to move that or discontinue?
No, the Goodwill people are still there. They are very active. The amazing thing about it is, I've been to a lot of waste sites for the region, and I believe this to be the most active site in waste diversion. As soon as you come in, there's a big Goodwill site, and they virtually handle everything.
Yes.
And it goes up to all kinds of different people. So basically, the waste is sorted before it even hits the scale.
Yes.
Which is really, I know when you go into the Welland site at Humberstone, they've got a diversion, but you really have to drive off to the right, and it doesn't nearly handle the scope that we do at Site 12. So it's really interesting, and we divert everything. It's amazing what we're able to accomplish and what gets recycled and sold out of it.
Excellent. Yes, I agree with you 100%. And it's good to see that it's continuing and getting better under your watch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on the councillor's report? Councillor Corr?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hildebrandt. We talked about residential what was the commercial? Do you have facts or numbers about the commercial? Did it go up or down?
No, unfortunately, I don't have those numbers, and that's one of the reasons why we're introducing waste metrics, because we really don't have a proper handle on all these numbers. We know it's all collected, but we're not sure where it all goes because it all goes into the region. That's the central depot. So we're trying to sort out the metrics so we get a better handle of how we're performing.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay. Any other questions, comments on the councilor's report? Not seeing any. Again, Councillor, thank you for that report. Very informative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Corr. Be it resolved that Council receive the verbal presentation from Councillor Hildebrandt with respect to regional waste collection for information. And this vote begins with Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Corr.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes?
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that does carry. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have a motion put forth by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Hildebrandt. Be it resolved that Council for the Town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaws, do now read a first, second, and third time and do pass same, and that the mayor and clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign and seal the bylaws. 1. Bylaw number 4391-2021, being a bylaw to authorize and execute a development agreement for the lands located at 614 Metler Road, Timothy Isaac Sinke and Laura Rose Marie Sinke, file number DA0221, and bylaw number 4392-2021, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 4299-2020 to establish 2021 fees and charges and to be collected by the corporate services of the Town of Pelham, and to add fees and charges to the Public Works schedule. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, on these two bylaws just presented by the clerk, is there any comments or discussions on them? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This begins with Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Corr.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes?
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. That does bring us to the motions on our agenda. The first one is the Town of Pelham's motion being brought forward by Councillor Olson regarding Remembrance Day. Mr. Mayor, you did second this, so I would ask that you vacate your seat as the presiding officer when considering this, and that our Deputy Mayor Wink to preside over this portion of the meeting. And Councillor Olson, did you wish to read your motion into the record?
I will. Whereas the Town of Pelham is committed to the preservation of community heritage by way of recognizing and commemorating Remembrance Day, and whereas on November the 11th, 2021, the Town of Pelham will join the nationwide Day of Remembrance to mark the sacrifice of the many who have fallen in the service of their country and acknowledge the courage, valor, and sacrifice of the military personnel who have served and continue to serve. And whereas the Canadian Warplane Heritage Museum historically hosts the largest annual indoor Remembrance Day service and second largest attended Remembrance Day service in Canada, which has been suspended due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas the Canadian Warplane Heritage Museum is committed to the recognition of Remembrance Day, thereby proposing a community cenotaph flyover transversing Hamilton and participating communities with the Lancaster and B-25 vintage military aircraft. And whereas the Canadian Warplane Heritage Museum has called upon the communities within the Golden Horseshoe for monetary support to facilitate a community cenotaph flyover. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Pelham pledge a contribution of $2,500 to offset the expenses of operating the vintage military aircraft to be used within the 2021 Remembrance Day service and ensure the town's inclusion in this act of remembrance. And that staff be authorized and directed to make said contribution from the special events account and provide the payment to the Canadian Warplanes Heritage Museum forthwith.
Thank you, Councillor Olson. Mayor Junkin, would you like to add any comments to that?
Well, first, if I could, Deputy Mayor, maybe I'll let Councillor Olson speak to it first. It was his motion. Thank you.
Councillor.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. It's a pleasure to bring this motion forward because this is, I think this is a year of significant loss and mourning. So I'm pleased to be able to bring this motion forward. I was privileged to be part of, or I am privileged to be part of a great regimental family. And one of the things that I've noticed, and one of the traditions and the ethos of Canadian soldiers is citizens first and soldiers second. And I want to point out that there's a living embodiment and literal embodiment of service in our community with our charities and service clubs, our library, and our kids with their lemonade stands. They see a need to step forward. But I also want to point out one of the organizations I admire terrifically, and that is our volunteer fire department. Over the year, I've had the opportunity to listen to Chief Lindberner's reports and be impressed by the level of training and commitment that we see, the leadership of the middle ranks, and certainly the leadership of the chief and his officers, and the contribution that our firefighters make to the community. And I mention those because those are the embodiment, the living embodiment of service that we honor on Remembrance Day. So that is why I'm pleased to make the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Mayor?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor Wink. I appreciate the chance to speak to this motion. The War Airplane Museum, they first contacted me, myself, and I thought it was a great honor and a great chance for this town to, we do have the pilot of the Lancaster living in the town. We've had the advantage, we've had the joy of having this plane fly over other Remembrance Day ceremonies. I was at the Battle of Britain ceremony some 2 weeks ago in Welland, and they had 3 vintage airplanes fly over. And while they aren't the main focus of these Remembrance Day ceremonies, they are. You could see the eyes and the veterans that were there, whether they're sons of the vets or what have you, and to see those airplanes go over top, it just brings a special something to the whole ceremony. And the same thing happens at the Remembrance Day ceremony that our Legion puts on every year. We have had flybys. And I'm happy, I'm lucky that I belong to a generation that hasn't experienced war. We can't imagine what it must have been like to have, whether it be 100 or 150 of these Lancaster bombers flying across the channel over to Europe. So they bring something special to a ceremony. Obviously it has a cost to it. And I hope this council joins in and feels fit to contribute the $2,500 request. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'll open it up to the rest of the council for comments. Councillor Hildebrandt.
Through you, Deputy Mayor Wink. Yes, I will be supporting the motion as well. My uncle served on the Red Cross during the Second World War. My father was in critical service for the governments. Locally, we had a gentleman that at 17 was enlisted in the army in Britain, and he served to lead the troops into Vimy Ridge with his battalion. He actually was shot up, left 2 weeks later on a boat back there to find his troops, the ones that were left, and do that. And with regards to Lancaster, we also have a representative in Ward 3 in our community, and he worked in the area where I worked at Foster Wheeler, and he spent all his spare time as a mechanic on the Lancaster. So he's also one of our local residents that I'm sure will be looking forward to see that heritage plane fly over here. So yes, I will be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kaur.
Yeah, through you, Deputy Mayor. This is just a thought. Are these planes capable of landing at the Welland Airport?
I have no idea myself. Councillor Olson, any idea?
I certainly don't know. My dad was a pilot. We had a plane, but it was they were quite a bit different than landing the conventional aircraft with the 3 wheels. You had to land on the 2 and put the third wheel down. So I don't really know. I don't know that.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes, Deputy Mayor. So I know that in the past, some of the pilots that are regulars and hangar owners arranged for a whole flyover of the smaller planes, the larger planes, and everything. And I think the smaller ones were able to. It's just the length of the runway they need, right? The larger ones, of course, not. So then I think they probably routed them to another nearby airport. So back to Hamilton, or perhaps the middle size would be able to go to the Niagara Lake Airport because it's longer than ours is. But only the smaller aircraft would be able to land in Welland.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Any other comments? So I'll put my 2 cents in. I'm fully in favor of this, but I think I would be remiss if I didn't ask the question of the Deputy Treasurer. I'd just like confirmation that the $2,500 would fit within budget.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, I confirm with the Director of Recreation, Culture and Wellness that there's sufficient budget in the special events department.
Perfect. Thank you, Deputy Treasurer.
You're welcome.
So seeing no further comment, can we put this to the vote?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, certainly. The vote begins with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Definitely yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Junkin.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Wink.
Yes.
And that carries. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wink, for taking over the spot. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That brings us to our next item, which is another motion. This is a motion put forth by Councillor Olson, and this is the 2022 Year of the Garden proclamation, and it is moved by Councillor Olson and seconded by Councillor Wink. Councillor Olson, do you wish to read your motion into the record?
Would you be so kind, Madam Clerk, to do that for me?
Of course I would.
Eyes getting so.
Whereas,
Out of breath.
whereas the Year of the Garden celebrates the centennial for Canada's horticulture sector, and whereas gardens and gardening contribute to the quality of life of our municipality and create safe and healthy places where people can come together, and whereas gardens and gardening have helped us face the challenges of the COVID pandemic, and whereas the Year of the Garden will be highlighted and celebrate the important contributions of our local gardening organizations and horticultural professionals and businesses. And whereas Communities in Bloom, in collaboration with the Canadian Garden Council, invites all municipalities to create the Year of the Garden. Now therefore be it resolved that the town of Pelham hereby proclaims 2022 as the Year of the Garden, celebration of the contributions of gardens and gardenings to the development of our community, our municipality, and the lives of our citizens in terms of health, quality of life, and environmental challenges. And that the Saturday before Father's Day, June 18th, 2022, be recognized as Garden Day in the town of Pelham as a legacy of Canada's Year of the Garden 2022. And that the town of Pelham is committed to be a garden-friendly town, supporting the development of its garden culture. And that all municipalities across Canada be invited to proclaim 2022 to be the Year of the Garden in their respective municipalities, and that a copy of this proclamation be provided to the FCMAMO and sent to MP Dean Allison for that purpose. To you, Mr. Mayor, for debate.
Okay. Councillor Olson, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, I'm pleased to bring this motion forward, Mr. Mayor, because there's several really truly Canadian success stories in our agribusiness, and this is an opportunity to say thank you to them. And this is a centennial event. The large part, the industry finds its home in Pelham. And it's also an opportunity to celebrate our local gardening associations that have done such a great job in promoting gardens in the community. And you can clearly see it when you go around the community and look at the improvements and the efforts that people are making during the pandemic and before. We live in a truly beautiful community, and this is to recognize those efforts and those contributions. And I believe in the future we'll see an opportunity to source some funding for different projects we have, because this is under the going to be under the auspices of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. And I want to say thank you to Councillor Houston for pointing this out to me, and she's a member of the FCM, so I want to mention her as well. But thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Olson. And Councillor Wink, you seconded it. Any words?
Just in support of Councillor Olson, we've seen some of these, some correspondence come through from other municipalities with similar motions. I know the city of Brantford sent this out probably within the last month or so. So I think it's worthwhile, and I agree with reaching out to other communities in Ontario and Canada to do the exact same as what we're proclaiming. So thank you, Councillor Olson, for bringing it forward.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wink. And now we'll open it up to other councillor members, and I see Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm in total agreement with this. I don't think that I can make an amendment to this, but I will see if I can. And if not, I would like to put it forward as a notice of motion. In 2020, Councillor Hahn put forward a motion to have a competition for our town gardens, from volunteers to do the gardens. And, you know, it was all in fun, and some of the gardens were truly beautiful. And I'm wondering if we could put an amendment to this to have that reinstated for not just 2022, but for every year. And if that can't be done, I would like to include it as a notice of motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wink, would you consider that to be a friendly amendment?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I think
Yeah, I'm sorry, I should have went to Councillor Olson, but go ahead, Councillor Wink, and then I'll go to Councillor Olson.
Yeah, the only thing is that, you know, in addition to the work that this motion is going through, we're going to be touching the beautification committee, and I think it would be the responsibility of staff to bring it forward on what we're going to do around this celebration. So, yeah, I see what you're saying, Councillor Stewart. But I think just let it evolve.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wing. Before you talk, can I please let me go to Councillor Olson? I'm sorry I put you in second spot there, Councillor Olson. Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think that's a very useful thing, and I thought it was, I was aware of that, and I thought it was included in our, the portion that says local gardening or organizations. That's where I thought that it was included when writing this, or editing this, I should say.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stewart?
Yes, no, I understand what Councillor Olson is saying, but these were not like committees like beautification that did these gardens. This was a totally separate thing where they were like just community groups. Like I think we had the Boy Scouts, and Councillor Hahn would probably remember more of them than I do. But, you know, just like even neighborhood groups that would, you know, kind of, you know, it's like adopting a road. You would adopt a garden plot and you would make it beautiful. But that's where I'm going, not where it's the town actually doing it, but the citizens themselves working together to beautify the town. Thank you.
Councillor Olson, I have to come back. With your motion, do you consider this a friendly amendment, or oh wait, I see Mr. CAO has a suggestion. Go ahead, Mr. CAO.
We can absolutely bring work back that will address the basic proposition that Councillor Stewart has put forth. But I'd ask you to please not amend your motion. Well, they are separate topics, and there's a bunch more complication to this, as we discussed last year, around this course of action. It is now, there are some labor relations implications to it as a starting point, and there's a budgetary implication. We are building a section of the budget of items that refer to, that are
Discretionary.
discretionary, thank you. See, I had two staff members who knew I was searching. I always, for whatever, want to drop the word discretionary. I'm indiscreet. Where this would slot in really well. We could deliver a report to you prior to the budget process so that it could have some analysis or some options to help you during the budget process. But no staff opposition to where you're going with this, but I really think you should keep them discrete and separate because there are some, there is absolutely a way to scratch the itch, but it requires some finesse and some work and more than what is contemplated in the motion as currently before us. So I would suggest it seems there's support, assuming you pass this motion. You could proceed any of three ways. Councillor Stewart could proceed with notice of motion, as is her right to do so. You could say that staff could simply publicly acknowledge that we're taking some direction, and we could come back with a report somewhere between now and December. We do it as sort of information only, but with some choices, and then we could put some of that content into the operating budget for next year, and you could each debate the level and degree of the program.
Thank you for that, thank you for that, Mr. CEO. And now going back to Councillor Stewart, what's your take on the advice given by Mr. CAO?
Yes, I'm good with that. As I mentioned when I started out commenting, that I wasn't sure if it could be amended or if I would need to put forward a separate notice of motion. That satisfies me completely. I think it's a project that should be ongoing through the years to do things to help keep our community members involved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Stewart. So I take it then you are withdrawing your motion then, obviously.
Well, I'd like to put forward
I'm sorry, withdrawing your amendment. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Any discussion on the motion put forward by Councillor Olson and Councillor Wink? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. On the motion presented, the vote begins with Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. Mr. Mayor, that brings us to our next item on the agenda, and that's a resolution to move into camera. And I have a motion put forth by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public in order to consider a matter under Section 232 of the Municipal Act as follows. B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, and D, labor relations or employee negotiations, 3 items, and F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudice confidence significantly of the competitive position or interfere significantly with the contractual or other negotiations of the person, group, or organizations. J, a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, or financial information that belongs to the municipality or local board and has monetary value or potential monetary value. And K, a position, plan, criteria, procedure, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on or by or on behalf of the municipality or local board. 1 item. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, so and the motion is, of course, to move in camera. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. This vote begins with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That does carry. If, Mr. Mayor, if council can give me a moment to turn off the recording and the live stream.
Yep, of course.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do see that we are live streaming and we are recording, and we do have a motion put forth by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Hildebrandt. Be it resolved that council adjourn the in-camera session and that council do now rise with report. And unless there's discussion, Mr. Mayor, may I call the vote?
Any discussion? Not seeing any?
Thank you. Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that does carry. Mr. Mayor, I do have a motion that was put forward by Councillor Kaur, seconded by Councillor Hildebrandt. Be it resolved that council receive the Pelham Art Advisory Committee application from Tammy Van Den Brink, and that council hereby appoint Tammy Van Den Brink to the Pelham Art Advisory Committee, and that the appointment bylaw be presented at the next regular council meeting being October 18th, 2021. Mr. Mayor, for discussion, unless you'd like me to call the vote.
Any discussion on this appointment? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. That does carry. Mr. Mayor, I have a motion that's put forward by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Wink. Whereas the town of Pelham received funding from the modernization grant to review web services. And whereas the town of Pelham has issued 2 requests for proposals for a review of web services with no successful bidder on either occasion. And whereas council for the town of Pelham deems it desirable at this time to sole source a third party, being Esri Canada Limited, to complete an independent review of web services to be funded by the modernization grant intake 2. And now therefore be it resolved that Council for the Town of Pelham directs staff to sole source and hire Esri Canada Limited to complete a review of web services and to provide the Town of Pelham potential software application options for the town's needs for consideration, and that Council for the Town of Pelham authorize this expense to be solely covered by the amount of funding received from the Modernization Grant Intake 2. To you, Mr. Mayor, for debate, unless you'd like me to call the vote.
Any debate on this item? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Hildebrandt. Be it resolved that the Chief Administrative Officer and Clerk be and is hereby authorized to undertake the directions provided during the in-camera meeting of October 4th, 2021. Mr. Mayor, if there's any debate?
Any debate on this item? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. This begins with Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. That does carry. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Kaur. Be it resolved that the following bylaw be ready first, second, and third time and passed, being bylaw number 4394, 2021, to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of Council of the Town of Pelham at its regular meeting held on the 4th day of October, 2021. Mr. Mayor, this would begin with Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. That does carry. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Kaur, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that this regular meeting of Council be adjourned until the next regular scheduled meeting of October 18th, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. And this starts with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that does carry. Mr. Mayor, you may gavel out your meeting.
Good night, everyone.
Have a
Good night,
good day.
Everyone.
Be well.
Good evening. Thanks, everyone.